This podcast is brought to you by Reynolds and Reynolds, the industry leader in automotive technology. Learn how Spark AI, Reynolds' unified AI data layer, can help you unlock your full potential by visiting rey.com/spark-AI. That's rey.com/spark-AI.
Welcome to Daily Drive for Tuesday, January 20th, 2026. I'm Kellen Walker in Las Vegas. Today on the show, Trump threatens European allies with tariffs unless Denmark sells Greenland. Mazda is pushing back its first EV again, and Lincoln is establishing its own identity with a move to Detroit. Plus, EY's George Legno explains why software-defined vehicles are starting to become a reality in 2026 and what that means for the industry.
I think we have gone across the tipping point now.
Let's run through all the news you need to know to keep up in the auto industry. President Trump says he'll impose a 10% tariff on goods from 8 European nations, including Germany, France, and the UK, starting February 1st. That would escalate tariffs to 25% by June, unless Denmark sells Greenland to the United States. Germany's VDA Auto Industry Association warns the costs will be enormous for automakers like Volkswagen, BMW, Mercedes-Benz, and Porsche, all major exporters to the U.S. VDA President Hildegard Müller called for a coordinated response from Brussels. The move targets NATO allies and could derail a U.S.-EU trade deal struck last July. European Parliament lawmakers have signaled that they'll block approval of that agreement following Trump's threat. Trump insists acquiring Greenland is necessary for national security, claiming Russia or China will take it otherwise. Mazda is pushing back its first dedicated electric vehicle by at least 2 years to 2029 as market conditions shift. The Japanese automaker had planned to start production in 2027, but changing regulations and tariff uncertainty have complicated the picture. EV registrations in the U.S. dropped 49% in November following the repeal of federal tax credits. So, Mazda's pivoting to hybrids instead, including a new hybrid option for its top-selling CX-5 crossover around 2027. CEO Masahiro Moro now expects EVs to account for 25% or less of Mazda's global sales by 2030, down from the original 25 to 40% target. And Lincoln is carving out its own identity. In February, the luxury brand moves about 55 employees to Ford's Michigan Central Station in Detroit, away from the parent company's Dearborn headquarters. The brand says the move lets Lincoln establish itself as a distinct luxury brand while staying connected to Ford's resources. And those are today's headlines. You can find more details on all those stories at autonews.com. Automotive News is out this week with our latest Auto Industry Confidence Index, which tracks how automakers, retailers, and suppliers are feeling about their business outlooks. Automaker confidence jumped 4.4 percentage points in the fourth quarter, reaching 58.2 on the index. Joining me now to talk about the automaker side of things is Automotive News staff reporter Vince Bond Jr. Vince, welcome back to Daily Drive.
Thank you.
Now, Vince, what's driving this increase in automaker confidence?
Well, there are several things. First, they're pretty optimistic about the fuel economy rules that are being relaxed under Trump. They feel they'll have more flexibility to build what customers want. And at the same time, they won't have the same pressure to produce as many electric vehicles. And as we know, demand for those EVs has been down, in recent years. And so fuel economy rules is one. And then consumer demand, sales are up 2.2% last year. So that's a good sign. Sales still aren't at pre-pandemic levels of, 17 million, but we did see some gains last year, so they do have some reasons to be optimistic about demand.
Nearly half of automakers expect their performance to be better in the next 6 months, but 71% are still very concerned about supplier financial distress. What's driving this disconnect between optimism about their own businesses and worry about their supply chain?
Well, there are a bunch of reasons. Suppliers are struggling in many ways. There are higher raw material prices, and then at the same time, they have to face U.S. tariffs that are unpredictable. Last year in Europe and North America, thousands of layoffs among suppliers and several bankruptcies. And so automakers know that their supply base is really, facing some challenges right now. So I think that's really driving that whole disconnect that we're seeing.
Perfect. Vince, thank you so much for joining me.
You're welcome.
We'll go over results for suppliers and retailers in the coming days here on Daily Drive. And you can read about all of the results of the latest automotive news Auto Industry Confidence Index at autonews.com. Coming up, EY's George Legno talks about why he thinks 2026 is the year software-defined vehicles become reality. That's next on Daily Drive.
If you're an automotive supplier and you know your team is building the next big thing, prove it on the industry's biggest innovation stage. Automotive News is now accepting applications for the 2026 PACE program. PACE Awards recognize traditional and non-traditional suppliers worldwide for new product, process, and business model innovation, and entries must be innovations already commercialized through a sale to an automaker. Still pre-commercial but past the pilot stage? PACE Pilot recognizes post-pilot, pre-commercial innovations across automotive and future mobility, products, software, IT systems, and processes with the potential to revolutionize an automaker's business. All submissions are reviewed by an independent panel of judges, and MEMA is the exclusive lead sponsor. Ready to be recognized? Apply by February 9th at autonews.com.
When your AI tools are siloed, lost data, duplicate entries, and confusion are inevitable. Spark AI isn't another AI tool to manage. Instead, it's a unified AI data layer, changing the game by ensuring your solutions are making life easier and working at their highest capacity. Don't miss Spark at NADA. Watch Ray, our new AI assistant, bring everything together in one intuitive command center for smart, fast decision-making. Ray answers your questions at any time, providing instant messaging, insights, help videos, or live support. Instantly analyze your sales history and market trends, or generate a sales report with one prompt. You can even ask which cars to buy at auction today for the best return. Schedule an appointment at our booth for everything from a short demo to a full retail management system demonstration using our core AI products. Visit rayray.com/NADA. That's REYREY.com/NADA.
Welcome back to Daily Drive. I'm Kellen Walker. Software-defined vehicles have been the industry's holy grail for years, promising over-the-air updates, in-vehicle personalization, and new subscription revenue streams. At CES 2026, EY's George Legno declared that the industry has finally crossed the SDV tipping point. Our own Molly Boygon spoke with Legno on the CES show floor for the Automotive News Shift podcast. Here's an excerpt from that conversation.
George Legno, EY's America's Automotive Leader. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Molly.
So I would love to hear just broadly your impressions of the show so far. How does CES 2026 compare to the past shows that you've been to?
I think 2026 is an interesting year. I think it's an interesting year for the automotives and the OEMs. I think that you feel a lack of presence from the OEMs this year, which I think is palpable throughout the organization, but I don't necessarily think that's a negative either. So if you look at the OEM's presence in the past, it's always been what I think categorized around three major areas. One, do they have something to launch? And do they want to launch something? Well, I think if you looked at the last years for a lot of the things that we both know about, whether it's policies or tariffs, etc., there's been a lot of disruption in the industry, which is causing them to focus their capital elsewhere. Hence, not a lot of launches that they're going to have out. Number two, I think it's becoming a little bit more of a show on software and the partnerships. So, rather than the OEMs coming here and spending tens of millions of dollars on large displays, they're actually showcasing their products through their partners, which I think is interesting.
So it sounds like to me it's a less of an automaker presence, but that indicates perhaps more focus and more attention to like the actual work of making all of these transitions happen?
I think it's a focus on the ecosystem, and I think it's a focus on partnerships, as you've seen several partnerships be announced already this week.
And, I think in years past, my understanding and my estimation is that there's been more talk about electric vehicle technology, which seems to kind of have taken a back seat this year to some of the robotaxis, autonomous vehicles, robotics. Do you agree with that assessment?
I completely agree with that. So like you, I've been here for several years, and I think there's 4 themes, and you just mentioned all of them, right? Whether it's autonomous, whether it's AI, whether it's robotics or EV, there's kind of an ebb and flow, and I think you see an ebb and flow this year. So if I go back 5+ years ago, we were really talking about level 4 autonomy. I think then the industry took a step back and tried to determine it's really hard and it's really expensive. So you saw that for the last few years, you've had autonomy kind of take a backseat to EV. So policies come around and people decide, the automakers, we're going to push EVs. You see EV technologies the last few years. Obviously, with what happened in 2025, now EV's taken that back seat. AI and robotics have been consistent. I think the difference this year is, in prior years, AI and really robotics, humanized robotics, were ideological, and now it's getting into practical use cases. So you're seeing that being implemented. So that AI partnership, along with the ability to increase simulation, increase speed to market, is really now making autonomy at the top of the presence here at CES in 2026.
I agree that it seems like robotics has a larger presence at the show. I have to wonder if that is a coincidence or perfectly aligned with the larger movement toward reshoring domestic manufacturing. Do you think that, this has been in the works for a while and it's sort of just blossoming now, or do you think that this is a conscious effort by companies to showcase how they can make more efficient domestic manufacturing?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think that clearly this year there has been a push, and with the kind of onshoring of the supply chain and manufacturing, there's going to be greater need for robotics. I think it comes along, though, with that AI technology, and really as you start to look at the AI and the compute power that exists today that didn't exist last year, it's allowing for that technology to be brought to light.
AI has also been really transformative for autonomous vehicles, as you mentioned, and I do think last year was kind of like a very hype around AI, and ChatGPT was still relatively new at that time, and now there's really like some demonstrable impacts. What do you think it is about the technological innovations in AI that have really enabled those leaps and bounds for autonomy and robotaxis?
I think the big presence, and you've seen the announcement, is the ability to simulate and the ability for that compute power to take the miles that the human beings that we've driven for a number of years and then actually be able to compute what's going to happen and how the car is going to react. So if you take 4 years ago and you look at what was existing in autonomy and AI, it was still relatively new and unproven. As the models get better, as the technology and the compute power gets stronger, it makes it easier and easier for that simulation to become a reality. Hence the robo-taxis and the autonomous that we're seeing this year.
You also mentioned that there's been a lot of partnerships on display, specifically in the area of software, which I've seen too. And, software-defined vehicles are still kind of all the rage. Do you think that the industry is meaningfully closer this show than last year to delivering like the promise of software-defined vehicles, subscriptions through the cockpit, in-vehicle personalization, autonomy and ADAS, perhaps via subscription?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it's top question of the show, right? It's on everybody's mind. I think that software-defined vehicles will be a reality in 2026. So to answer your question, I think we have gone across the tipping point now. I think the estimation is 50% of the cars manufactured in 2026 will either be semi or full SDV. So I think that is a large transition. Again, some of that is coming from the compute power and the ability for AI to transition. So if we look at AI in the cockpit, right, edge AI to allow personal assistance, that is all assisting the SDV. And in fact, I think SDV is 2026. Will it be, ADV in 2027 as AI takes a more dominant position with the AI-defined vehicle?
You can hear the full interview with EY's George Legno on this week's episode of the Automotive News Shift Podcast, available wherever you get your podcasts. That's Daily Drive for today. I'm Kellen Walker. Thanks to Automotive News executive producer Jake Neer, as well as our own Hans Greimel and Michael Martinez for their reporting for today's podcast. You can get the latest news on tech and innovation, Trump's tariff threats, and everything happening in the auto industry at autonews.com. Come back tomorrow for a conversation with Matt Carey, CEO of Teradar, about the company's pioneering sensor technology combining the benefits of radar and LiDAR.
What we've done, because we're between these two, is combine the best of both. So we're flexible, solid state, we can see through weather like radar, but we also give you the high resolution that LiDAR provides.
We'd love to hear from you. Let us know what you think of the show and the topics we covered today. Send us an email at dailydrive@autonews.com or leave us a voicemail at 313-444-2774. And if you enjoyed the podcast, remember to like, leave a review, and subscribe so you never miss an episode.